Welcome and thank you for joining us. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the proposal and review process for requesting an allocation of technology resources available via the United States NAIRR Pilot program. My name is Tim Middlecoop and I'm joined by my colleague Lauren Michael.
We are co-principal investigators on a National Science Foundation grant awarded to Internet2 in partnership with the Campus Research Computing Consortium of research computing and data professionals. Through this grant, we are supporting NAIRR Pilot communications and user facilitation activities by leveraging CaRCC's network of these professionals, who support educators and researchers across the country. Internet2 is a nonprofit .edu that operates the National Research and Education Network backbone and supports related collaboration technologies and communities like CaRCC and its partners. While today's content does not necessarily reflect the views of the National Science Foundation or other partners of the NAIRR Pilot, we have received significant input and review to the content of this presentation from NSF officials and from others executing the proposal, allocation, and user facilitation components of the NAIRR Pilot. Today, we will briefly introduce the types of computing and data resources available through the NAIRR Pilot and discuss requirements for proposers seeking to access allocations of these resources for teaching and open science research activities. The majority of the presentation will then focus on guidance for proposing access to NAIRR Pilot resources, with descriptions of the review and allocation process, specific proposal instructions and review criteria, and common reasons for rejection that proposers can avoid by clearly addressing these criteria. A lack of detail in resource calculations has been the most common reason for rejection, and so we'll spend a fair amount of time discussing appropriate resource estimates in the latter portion of the presentation. In this presentation, language will appear in italics when it has been taken directly from the call for proposals or elsewhere on the NAIRR Pilot website. The NAIRR Pilot program connects U.S. researchers and educators to computing capacity, tools, data, and training resources for AI research. This is a multi-agency public-private pilot coordinated by the NSF and with bipartisan support. The NAIRR Pilot program aims to provide equitable access regardless of academic or nonprofit organization size, type, funding sources, or academic domain of application. You can find more information on the NAIRR Pilot program and its overall objectives by consulting the resources on the pages linked here, which describe the full scope of agencies, other partners, allocable resources, and available funding. One thing to remember is that the NAIRR Pilot is a pilot and not yet a fully funded program. As such, some of the processes and associated programs continue to grow, change, and improve. Visit the NAIRR Pilot website for the latest information and to subscribe to the NAIRR Pilot monthly newsletter for important updates and information.
The NAIRR Pilot welcomes you to apply for a resource allocation for your AI-related research and education projects. Some example of use cases for NAIRR Pilot resources include delivering hands-on AI courses, developing a foundational model using large-scale medical imaging datasets, training, tuning, and using large language models for a wide range of applications from code generation to medical diagnostics, training models using simulation and synthetic data, and using novel hardware for training and inferencing. Some pretty unique AI hardware is available through industry partners. There are a large range of potential applications, resources, needs, and technologies. One of the unique and exciting features of the NAIRR Pilot is the public-private partnership and the availability of private sector resources. These resources represent leading-edge offerings from corporate and nonprofit organizations and range from cloud computing capacity environments to specialized hardware models, software, and other tools. Be sure to consult the resource catalog to learn what resources are allocable from each resource provider and other important information regarding your decision to request no-cost access to the NAIRR Pilot. There are a large number of federally supported GPU and CPU resources available via the NAIRR Pilot. These resources comprise mostly of homogeneous partitions or are dominated by a single accelerator or processor type. The number and types of hardware may vary from resource to resource. For example, not all GPU systems contain 4 GPUs per node. Please note, even though there are a considerable number of GPUs, they are not all exclusively allocated to NAIRR Pilot awards. Additionally, the NAIRR Pilot includes resources that offer alternative architectures designed to support a wide range of needs beyond a more conventional HPC architecture. NAIRR resources are requested by submitting a proposal to the NAIRR Pilot opportunity. Specific categories of opportunities can be found under Current Opportunities in the NAIRR Pilot portal. Proposals already aware of the quantity of specific resources needed for up to 12 months of use may consider a full-scale request for researcher resources or classroom educator resources. Proposers looking for preliminary access to determine the appropriate type and quantity of resources may begin first with a startup project request of up to 3 months, requiring a much shorter proposal with a faster review period. Finally, in a more recent addition, the Deep Partnerships opportunity offers close collaboration with some private sector providers, and we'll briefly cover this opportunity next. We'll cover the remaining opportunities in more detail at the remainder of the presentation. Deep partnerships provide unique and discrete opportunities for deeper collaboration between private sector providers and research teams. Potential project areas, partnership expectations, durations, submission deadlines, and review timelines vary. Detailed information for each partnership can be found on the Deep Partnerships opportunity page. Please note the availability of partnerships will change over time. Even though there are separate opportunities, all with their own requirements, there are a number of common ones. These include all projects must have an AI component, principal investigator or lead instructor, and/or all other users or learners must be from an eligible organization physically based in the United States, though this does not necessarily mean that these individuals need to be U.S. citizens. Award details and abstracts will be published on the NAIRR Pilot website. And finally, NAIRR Pilot allocation requests and the use of other NAIRR Pilot resources, such as help tickets, must use an institutional email address and not a personal one, such as Gmail. Be sure to check the relevant opportunity page for specific language and additional requirements. Let's switch now to the proposal requirements and guidance specific to the NAIRR Pilot Research Resources opportunity. For most of the remaining presentation, we'll focus on full-scale proposal submissions and later discuss startup project opportunity in a bit. At this time, proposals for full-scale allocations are accepted at any time with a soft deadline around the 15th of the month, ahead of the monthly review process. Research proposals should be submitted if and when a project is ready to immediately take advantage of the requested resource upon favorable review and notification, according to the timeline described on this slide. Classroom educator proposals will need to list specific start dates for the course described. Proposals are peer-reviewed approximately monthly by a recruited set of peer reviewers from the AI research, education, and computing communities. Select proposals are then matched and perhaps adjusted or declined by a matching committee based upon preference or resource availability. Adjustments may be made if the proposed scale of resources is not well justified. Awardees can expect to be notified within 3 months. Turnaround times may vary based on the number of proposals received for that month. Finally, PIs are expected to provide regular progress reports to demonstrate progress. The Research Resources Opportunity page contains information about eligibility, available resources, and other information and requirements for the opportunity, which we'll cover in the remaining of this section. The available resources list contains important information specific to the resource, including recommended use, specific systems and services eligibility, and resource-specific requirements for the opportunity. Please first consult this carefully before preparing your proposal. NAIRR Pilot awards are for access to technology resources and do not provide funding that can be used to purchase materials or cover effort. While some commercial resources are displayed in units of US dollars rather than units of technology to be consumed, awardees are granted access to the proposed amount of technology resources and are not granted that dollar amount. Please note that a number of resources have been paused, so please check the website for the latest information. Proposals to use resources for research should align with one or more of the NAIRR Pilot focus areas. Projects in other areas of AI research and applications may secondarily be considered for allocation. While we'll not read all of these, you can refer to the website while preparing your proposal. Please note that the set of focus areas has been updated in recent months. Always consult nairrpilot.org for the latest information before submitting. For complete eligibility requirements, please refer to the NAIRR Pilot website. We highlight some of these here. Project results must be open and actively shared with the community. Research resource projects must be completed within 12 months. It is acceptable to split complex or large research projects into logical parts across multiple separate resource requests. Projects are required to complete regular progress reports and a final report. Please see the URL listed here for details. One way to assess alignment to the focus areas is to look at award abstracts of resources award page. Here you can also find information about the specific resources awarded.
We'll now discuss proposal preparation instructions and submission. Beyond what we present today, it is very important to read and follow instructions specific to each opportunity and to specific resource providers, as these may change. It is also important to recognize that a NAIRR Pilot resource request is not a research proposal, but a specific request for computational and data resources as part of what may be a broader research project. The proposal components and review criteria differ from what you may have experienced for research proposals, and the proposed timeline need only cover use of the requested resources. After determining what resources you need and that you will be ready to immediately use them, you should review eligibility requirements, prepare documents that meet the review criteria, which we will cover next, and finally, submit it via the NAIRR Pilot website. At a later date, you can request a supplement to the award to add new or more resources or to request more time. Make sure to include only specific peer-reviewed funding or other sources of direct support for the research activities relevant to the request for resources. Proposals not supported by a merit review grant are subject to additional scientific review. The project description outline is broken down into 4 parts. Part A covers the scientific and technical goals and should be friendly for a general audience, not written for domain experts. Avoid complex technical words and do not use unexplained acronyms. All this should make about a page. If proposals include multiple projects, aims, or phases in the same proposal, it's important that the requirements and review criteria are covered for all of them within the 3 pages. This includes detailed calculations of resource estimates for each. Thus, proposers may wish to submit separate proposals timed appropriately for different projects, aims, or phases. Part B covers the compute, storage, and other resource estimates and justification, which we will cover in detail later. These must align with the scientific and technical goals. Part C details any support needs. In addition, any restrictions on code, data, or access should be noted here. And finally, Part D covers the team and team preparedness. Among other things, this is where you cover the team's experience with similar systems and scales. If others are going to be doing important work, their role and background needs to be covered in this section. Finally, references should be placed in a separate supplemental document, uploaded separately. Across the 4 sections of the allocation request, and beyond eligibility criteria and other requirements, proposals will be evaluated across 6 criteria: alignment with the NAIRR Pilot focus areas, project readiness for immediate progress, feasibility of the technical approach, need for the requested resources versus those otherwise available to the project team, knowledge and experience of the proposing team, and justification for the estimated resource requirements. To guide the content of your project description in meeting these review criteria, the NAIRR Pilot portal provides additional details of the expected content for each of these 4 sections of the project description outline. The scientific/technical goal section is typically close to a page in length, covering the scientific and methodological basis with cited prior work by the group or by others, and indicating alignment with the NAIRR Pilot focus areas. The overall plan and timetable for use of the requested resources should be indicated, including the need for specific NAIRR Pilot resources versus those otherwise available to the project team, the plan for required dissemination, and an indication of support for the proposed effort. While external funding is not required, it may contribute to demonstrating scientific feasibility if via peer review. For the proposal section on the estimate of compute, storage, and other resources, you need to clearly articulate the amount of resources that you need based upon requirements and scaling information from clearly described benchmarking and/or scaling tests, or citable data from others. Failing to do so is the most common reason for rejection or for a significant reduction in allocated resources. For each methodologically linked project phase or category of AI-related computational tasks, how many resource units, credits, dollars, etc. do these computational quantities total to? For example, how much computing time is needed on what resource type? for how many such computations and how much data storage is needed. For clarity, proposers should summarize calculations via tables that capture benchmark values and relevant scaled-up calculations totaled across project tasks and phases. Be sure to use resource-relevant units, for example, GPU hours, and if a resource is allocated in some other units, be sure to also include a conversion to those units, for example, service units or dollars for some resources. Mainly, the public commercial cloud offers options to use a resource pricing calculator, which in many of their cases is required component of your submission. Make sure that the link to your resource pricing calculator works. If you first need help with benchmarking or to test your software and execution approach, consider a startup project request as your starting point. And remember, this is kind of like a math problem, so it's like showing your work. You will be graded on your answer in the review. The third section on support needs is where you can indicate the extent of support that would be essential or helpful for setting up and executing your planned use of the resources. Depending on your prior experience with the resources, your support needs may be minimal, or may only include clearly articulated requirements for the resources to support certain access restrictions or specific computational capabilities. If you are requesting research collaboration offered by some resource providers, describe how your project is suited to and would benefit from the collaboration, citing any prior work or coordination with the resource provider. This is, of course, separate from the type of collaboration that we discussed in the deep partnerships opportunities, each of which is specific to a single resource provider. The final section of the project description is where you can reinforce the team's readiness and ability to begin work using the resources upon favorable review and matching. Make sure to list all team members needing access to various resources, including their title and institutional affiliation, and project roles. While U.S. institutional affiliation is required for all projects, only specific federally funded facilities require that all users are U.S. citizens. You'll need to consult the specific resource listing entry for this and possibly other requirements. This is also where you can indicate team and individual expertise and experience relevant to the proposed methods, computational skills, and resources. We occasionally see lengthy descriptions of individual accolades, which in the case of a resource allocation request are insufficient on their own and often less directly relevant for demonstrating team preparedness. We will wrap up this section with some common proposal pitfalls. To be honest, we're being a little blunt here, but they are based on our own experience as reviewers, and we want to help you succeed. One pitfall we see too often is a failure to follow the proposal guidance on formatting, outline, etc. The number one pitfall is not including sufficient detail for the resource request calculations. A statement of, we need 20 million GPU hours based upon prior work, by itself is not a sufficient justification for requesting millions of dollars worth of compute. Make sure you show how you calculated the total based upon component resource values and describe how you know what those values are, much like students being asked to show their work on an exam. Another common pitfall is the failure to demonstrate that the team is ready to immediately use the resources. Make sure you provide details that show that the team has experience with relevant resources and scale, and that research activities prior to the use of the resources are complete or will be completed as soon as the allocation might be granted. Saying that the first 6 months of the project will be obtaining and preparing data is a sure way to have reviewers question your readiness. Finally, another pitfall is to use the same language you would use in a research grant proposal. This will set your proposal in the wrong direction and won't allow you to include the details that you really need here. It's a resource request to complete a specific set of computational work, rather than a proposal for the entire scope of a research project.
We'll now go over some examples, some good, some not so good. The following examples are based upon actual proposals. The NAIRR Pilot website hopes to post full exemplar proposals soon. Take a look at this example. What do you think? Is this a good resource justification? Unfortunately, there are issues with this one. Upon initial inspection, there are lots of numbers apparently from benchmarks. However, it is not clear how the benchmarks relate in scale or complexity to the proposed work. And the benchmark requirements are not connected to the total via some numbers of anticipated training and tuning computations. There needs to be some multiplication and addition. The numbers need to actually add up to the total. Make it easy for the reviewer to see and check your math. This slide just repeats what I just said. The next example is much better. We now present an example that was rated as excellent. Take a moment to read it. Note the detailed calculations as well as the detailed testing. See how the tables make things clearer? Now let's look at another excellent example. Take a moment to read it. How is this one different? What do you like? As you can see, it is easy to follow how the resource request was arrived at. Take the number of unique monthly users, test how many tokens are required per user per month, and then compute the total number of tokens required for this project and convert it into dollars. In this case, if you do the math, it ends up being about 15 input tokens and 75 output tokens per unique user, which sounds reasonable. As you can see, this gives a lot of insight into what is being done. If I were to improve this request further, I would spell out the token consumption per user in the calculations and add a summary table to the end to show this information. Also note they specifically indicate GPT-4o. In some scenarios, specific choices may have an impact on resource consumption rates. Also note the consistent use of units. Without units, it's just a number. And remember, show your work.
We'll now shift to proposal instructions specific to the classroom/educator opportunity through the NAIRR Pilot. You will see that the classroom/educator resources opportunity also contains important information and requirements, much like the researcher resources opportunity. The page we're showing here has a similar tool that lists resources available for courses. Importantly, the available resources and the information and requirements for them differs between the research and classroom educator opportunities. For example, several providers offer opportunities for each learner to have a Jupyter notebook or similar environment. The NAIRR Pilot Classroom/Educator Resources opportunity is open to US-based undergraduate and graduate courses and short-form training sessions. All instructors and learners must be physically based in the US. Proposal instructions are included in the Classroom/Educator Resources opportunity page. The 3-page project description must follow a prescribed outline to address specific review criteria. Other supporting documents are counted separately, including references. There are specific document formatting requirements that are available via the opportunity webpage. The proposal submission form is linked on the bottom of the opportunity webpage. Be sure to read the submission form during preparation, as it contains additional information. The review criteria for classroom/educator proposal submissions is as follows. The proposal must demonstrate alignment with the educational and workforce development focus, and it must demonstrate that the course is ready to teach. The course syllabus should be ready to go with a specified start date, and instructors should have tested a majority of the course content on similar systems and with other individuals, such as TAs or in other classes. This is an expectation that resource providers are not the primary source. There is an expectation that resource providers are not the primary source of technical support for learners, and such proposals should address how instructors will support learners. Prior experience teaching previous classes with similar content or use of technology is a plus for demonstrating readiness. Critically, and given that this is a request for technology resources, the proposal must match the resources offered and align with the resource-specific guidance on how to request them. The project description outline is broken down into 4 parts, similar to the research opportunity, with details available on the NAIRR Pilot portal. Part A covers the course description, including learning objectives, target audience, timing, and the overall plan for integrating the use of the requested resources into the curriculum. Remaining sections will more closely mirror those for the research opportunity. Part B again covers the compute, storage, and other resource estimates and justification, connected in this case to the number of learners. Part C details any support needs from the resource providers. In addition, any restrictions on code, data, or other components should be noted here. Part D similarly covers the team and team preparedness. Each member of the instruction team should be listed with their affiliation, role, and citizenship, given that some resources have federal restrictions. This is also where you should discuss prior experience with teaching this or similar course content and with using the requested or similar resources. Here's a hypothetical example based upon a real excerpt from the resource justification of a classroom/educator proposal. Take a moment to read it. In this case, the proposers are requesting both AI notebooks and computing capacity, with each expressed in different resource-specific service units, and with clear multiplication per the number of learners and hours. The proposer also requested support to integrate the GPU resources, which is an applicable form of support to requests so that the instructor is prepared to directly support all learners. Also note how specific the numbers are, that the calculations are obvious, and that they are placed in a table for clarity. This makes it easy for reviewers to see what is being requested. Instructors may also wish to request access a few months before the class starts for preparation time.
So how do you get good estimates? You test. Testing has a lot of benefits beyond just the numbers. It also demonstrates the project readiness. Obviously, you may not have the resources to do a full test, but you can run on a subset of the data even though the results may not be scientifically meaningful. You may also be able to do testing that may be more scientifically meaningful on a reduced resolution or precision dataset. Remember that computational scaling is often nonlinear and 2 data points is linear. However, one thing you should do is use similar hardware, such as GPU type and memory size, and environments. For example, don't assume that it is trivial to move from a single GPU to many GPUs. Scalability depends on many factors, and testing is essential. One way to test is to use systems already available to you on your campus, or leverage startup and testing options available from many of the resource providers who offer such access for these exact purposes. The NAIRR Pilot also offers a startup project opportunity for a subset of resources to help you prepare for larger allocations. Startup allocations can be made for durations of up to 3 months and are smaller, lighter weight requests for testing. To apply, navigate to the Startup Project page found under the Current Opportunities menu on the NAIRR Pilot website and complete the form. A review decision should be made within 2 weeks. Here are some other resources that you can use for testing. Most have a no-cost startup or exploratory type allocation. Please note that the allocation process varies from the complex to a simple account approval. Some government-funded resources may require prior funding. Most commercially available resources, including many available via the NAIRR Pilot, have no charge, quick access options for modest research and education purposes, which can be used for scale testing prior to submission of a NAIRR Pilot research allocation.
Here are some links for getting help, all of which you can find on the NAIRR Pilot website. If you have questions, you can attend the NAIRR Pilot office hours or submit a NAIRR Pilot ticket via the website. And be sure to download today's slides for future reference. Speaker notes are included. So what did we learn today? This is a resource request proposal, not a research or course proposal. You'll need to adjust appropriately. Demonstrate that you are immediately able to start using the resources. Read and follow the proposal instructions. Provide detailed justifications and calculations for your resource requests. Show your work. And ask for help, leveraging the NAIRR Pilot office hours as needed. We would like to thank everyone who provided input in forming our development of this content.
As a reminder, any opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Science Foundation.